Hello again. So the Western Hemisphere territories, really about 3,500 distinct jurisdictions, as I will call them. You can look at it as 1,000 to 1,500. There's different ways to look at it. There's different terminologies for these, as all around the world when you try to look at peoples and the ebbing and flowing of the civilizations. But different terminologies for them, which could be such things as tribes, cities, bands, towns, pueblos, civilizations, territories, regions, provinces, states, many different types of terms for these. Now, the point is that they had territories, and they had definite boundaries to their territories, just the way we do today. We've got imaginary lines today, don't we? Well, they had imaginary lines then, too. And all the territories, in almost all cases, were accounted for. They knew where their territory began, and they knew where their territory ended. There was natural boundaries, such as rivers being obvious ones, but just like all around the world. They knew where their territories begin and ended in most cases with these boundaries. Now, there's a myth about indigenous in certain areas up and down the Western Hemisphere about them owning land, not owning land. And that is tied in with the pristine wilderness myth, that Europeans just came here, it was pretty much empty, and we just kind of moved in. As a completely mythical interpretation that's been added over time, in the same way as the gifts have become invisible and the contributions have become invisible. Information like that has slowly morphed over time from what they knew to be the truth back then. So, yeah, there is some truth to the fact that in many indigenous cultures, the land is very sacred. And there was contiguous behaviors throughout the spiritual teachings all up and down the Western Hemisphere. There were connections. They weren't completely separate people in that regard. So we can speak about them being continuous and contiguous, two separate issues. So the myth about them owning land, yeah, in many cases the land was considered sacred and not even subject to ownership. But they did, that's personal ownership, individual ownership. But they did have their land, they knew where it ended, and they had their territories. Languages, we're talking about thousands of languages. We don't really know how many languages there were, but certainly there was many, many cultures and many, many rich cultures, and a lot of languages that aren't with us today, that's for sure. I'll see you next time.